Now it's actually recording. So we are going to start the today's session. And today I'm in my chamber, so there will be no disturbance at all. Unlike the last class, you will not face any disturbance from my side. I hope uh, you will also not give any disturbance from your side to this, interaction. I hope I am audible. If I am not audible, you can let me know it, right? So in the last class, we, you know, I ended by saying, there are six perspective, six perspectives on Islam in the modern period. And what are the six perspectives? Uh, so do you remember all the six perspectives? Have you taken any note? Any one of you? Have you taken any note of the six perspectives of Islam in modern time? Have you? Quick. Taha, have you noted it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what is the first perspective? You just, the class will be on introduction mode. So your participation is also very, significant or important so far as this introduction mode is concerned. So what is that first perspective?
Islam within the paradigm of modernity. This was given by
And that,
Syed Ahmad Khan.
Syed, Syed Ahmad Khan. What does it mean, Taha? What do you understand by this, uh, you know, uh, uh, statement? I mean, by this point, what do you understand, Taha? Islam within the paradigm of modernity. What
Islam,
this perspective is all about.
Islam within the paradigm of modernity means it's nothing but to reform it. Means with equal to the modern structure, like
Are you
Renaissance.
are you saying it is reforming Islam in order to make it compatible with modernity?
Somewhat, sir.
No, you are very close. You know, reforming Islam and harmonizing Islam with modernity are two different things. Reforming means you are identifying some, uh, drawbacks, disadvantage. Then you are reforming it in order to make it
Sir,
compatible with the modernity. Yes, yes.
your voice is too low, sir.
My voice is too low.
Yes, sir.
Okay. No, in the last class, your madam, I mean my wife, said that you are speaking so loudly. So as a professor, you should not speak so loudly, and that's why I in this class I used my very slow voice, not the loud voice. Uh, but is it audible right now, Venkatesh?
Yes.
Is it audible right now?
Yeah, it's audible, sir.
It's audible. Okay, let me increase the sound. Then you'll let tell me. Now, is it okay? Is it okay? Venkatesh, is it okay?
Fine, sir.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So the point is that the first perspective is all about harmonizing Islam uh, with modernity, and reforming Islam and harmonizing Islam are two different things. Harmonizing basically means you know reinterpreting Islam with a modern tune, right? There is no reform actually, right? So the first perspective gives importance on how to harmonize Islam with modernity. Earlier, if you remember, I told that Islam was antithetical to reason, and I gave the reason why Islam was antithetical to reason, primarily because Islam believed in the supremacy of one God, Islam believed in the teaching of Prophet Muhammad, and Islam believed in the supremacy of the Quran, and that's why it was antithetical to the religion. But this perspective, it try to connect reason with the Islam, right? So Islam, uh, it uh, gave importance on reason instead of belief. I mean, it's not denouncing belief, but belief is one part, and why there is a belief, i- there is a rational justification. Why I am doing that and not doing that, doing this or doing that, right? So in this perspective, Islam was harmonized with modernity, and earlier Islam was antithetical to reason, and here a kind of churning is actually happening between the Islam and the rationality modernity, right? And consequently, Islam is trying to show itself as rational as belief. I mean, Islam is both rational and belief. The first perspective speaks about this aspect, and this aspect was popularized by Syed Ahmad Khan. He, in fact, brought rational and belief into the fold of Islam, right? And that's how he harmonized Islam with the modernity. Then what is the second? Taha, what is the second?
Sir, it's a continuing tradition.
Islam is continuing tradition, and there is a Deoband school. It advocates this position, and in this perspective, you know, uh, retaining of earlier or original values of Islam without any modification was actually argued that since Islam is a continuing tradition and it has its own merit, it should not be judged on modern perspective. Islam is secular, so don't teach secularism to Islam. Rather, Islam is secular. So you need to understand the secular aspect of the Islam, right? Don't teach the secularism to Islam. This is all about this Islam as a continuing tradition. It is the second perspective on Islam. And the third perspective is that modernity under Muslim nation state, it was, uh, you know, mostly it was developed by Jinnah, right? And in this perspective, the question like how modernity can be, domesticated within the Muslim nation state, how modernity is harmonized with the Muslim nation state. Now, this aspect was given very, importance. How modernity can be domesticated within the Muslim nation state. So when you are creating a theocratic state like Pakistan, then how to justify that theocratic state? When democracy and secularism, uh, these two values were prevailing in the whole world. Uh, in that context, this third perspective justify that a Muslim nation state or a theocratic state can also be modern, right? So you cannot say that a theocratic state is not modern. You cannot say that Pakistan is not modern, rather than Jinnah, did something to convince us that a theocratic state can be modern. So not always a secular state is modern. A theocratic state is also modern. So this perspective, brought or highlighted this aspect. And the fourth perspective was that modernity fused with Islam, and that was given by the Muhammad Iqbal. And in this perspective, for Iqbal, Muhammad Iqbal, uh, you know, to him, nothing is antithetical. Nothing is antithetical in modernity and Islam. I mean, Islam and modernity are not antithetical to each other. Rather than Islam and modernity are very much are close to each other, and they have a very deeper connection. And modernity is part and parcel of Islam, and modernity has to be moderated with the teaching of Islam. I mean, it's saying that the modernity will not teach Islam, rather than modernity should learn from the Islam, because the philosophy of modernity is within the Islam. If you don't understand Islam, then you cannot understand the modernity, right? So that is Muhammad Iqbal. So instead of Islam being moderated with the teaching of modernity, so he's saying that the modernity will not teach Islam, rather than Islam will teach modernity, and modernity should learn from the Islam. So that is the fourth perspective is all about that modernity fused with Islam. It's Muhammad Iqbal. And then the fifth feature is that equality of religion, religious pursuits within the single nation state, that is given by the Maulana Azad. And to this perspective, Islam is one of the religions that can coexist with other religions within a single nation state. That argument was put forth. Uh, that what is that argument? The Islam, like any other religions, can coexist with the non-Islamic religions within a single nation state. So peaceful coexistence with other religions is in fact indicates the modernity of Islam. So that is given by the what is his name? Maulana Azad. So to Maulana Azad, that what is modernity to Islam? Modernity is to Islam is in fact the peaceful coexistence of Islam with non-Islam in a single nation state. So Maulana Azad is actually talking about a secular state, in Indian secular state. So he is viewing modern the relation between the modernity and Islam from India's secular state point of view. That the coexistence between Islam and non-Islam is actually the or the maturity or modernity of Islam. That is modern. And the last perspective was actually integral Islam or political Islam, that is given by the Abdul Allah Maududi. Right. Even I am not familiar with this name, but for the sake of understanding this perspective, I'm just explaining. So I don't know this person. For the first time, I heard the name of the person. Right. So to what is this political Islam perspective? Now to this perspective, Islam is the source of all of political identity. Islam is the source of political identity, and it is also source of political action. So Islam is a source of political identity and political action, and it advocates the formation of state and society according to the understanding of Islamic principle. Now, radical Islam. Right? What is the radical Islam? Radical Islam is every identity and every action, the source of every identity and every action, belongs to Islam, and the formation of the state and society must be according to the Islamic principle. So that's all about making a pan-Islam. Pan-Islam means every non-Muslim has to be Muslim. Every non-Islamic society has to be Islamic society. Right. So that is political, Islam. Everything needs to be Islam. Everything needs to be, made Islamic, right? So non-Islamic means you don't have any identity. So non-Muslim is a non-entity to this political, Islam. So if you have a political identity, or if you want to have a political identity, then you have to be a Muslim. But that is the perspective of political Islam. Now this is all about Islamic tradition, that is Islamic tradition. Uh, Two different types of Islamic tradition: Islamic tradition in the medieval period and Islamic tradition in the modern period. Now let's take the syncretic tradition. I told that the positive aspect of impact of medieval Islamic tradition. One of the positive aspect of impact of medieval Islamic tradition is actually the syncretic tradition, where the Bhakti and Sufi tradition emerged. And both this Bhakti and Sufi tradition is actually the philosophical, philosophical base of any kind of secular state. So to understand a secular state, uh, the understanding of Bhakti and Sufi tradition is actually the must. You should. So what is this syncretic tradition? And both the Sufi and Bhakti tradition uh, belongs to this syncretic tradition. And syncretic means what? A kind of mixture, a kind of meaningful interaction, right? So syncretic tradition is a tradition that is based on the harmony of a number of ideas and value system in general, and harmony of Islam and Hinduism in particular. So syncretic means there is a synchronization, there is a mixture of many ideas, many value system, that there will be interaction between these ideas, there will be interaction between these value system, and one values need to understand the positive aspect of other value. So there will be a learning uh, from each other, right? So that is the synchronization, right? So when each values, each culture, each tradition learns from each other, then it establishes a tradition, and that tradition is called the syncretic tradition. So in generally speaking, the syncretic tradition is a tradition that is based on the harmony of a number of ideas of the value system in general sense. But if you will be very particular, then the syncretic tradition, you can talk about in particular that synchronization happens between the Islam and Hinduism. So when Islam entered to the soil of India, if you remember the last class, uh, it interacted with the local sects. It learned from the local sect. It taught something to the local sects, and interaction happened. There is positive interaction and there is also negative interaction, right? There is positive interaction and there is negative interaction, and this positive interaction created a syncretic tradition. So Hinduism, uh, uh, you know okay, let me edit. Uh, Due to this, syncretic tradition from Hinduism, one tradition emerged due to the influence of this syncretism, right? Hinduism, one tradition, it emerged from Hinduism, that is called the Bhakti tradition. And if you remember Nanak, he is in fact one of the important personality of this Bhakti tradition. And there is another tradition that is emerged from the Islam, that is called the Sufi tradition. And if you remember Kabir is an important advocate of this Sufi tradition. So if you go to the feature nature characteristic of Bhakti tradition and Sufi tradition, then you will find there are many common grounds, right? Now this tradition constitutes the foundation of syncretic tradition, the foundation. Today, the world is celebrating this tradition in managing its problem of diversity. Actually, the world is celebrating the values called secularism. Or why secularism is very important to almost all nation state today. Now, it is practically due to there is a diversity and there is a problem of diversity. Now, how to address the problem of diversity, right? And that's why there is a need of secularism or secular values in order to protect democracy, right? So we have diversity, we have multiple identity, and we have to protect the democracy. Now, how to do that? So to do that, we need certain secular principles, secular values. Now, what is the secular principles of secular values? That is basically the base of secular principle or secular values. In fact, the values of this syncretic, tradition, right? So today, the entire world is celebrating this syncretic tradition or slash the secular values or secularism in managing its problem of diversity. However, India, why there is sound, Venkatesh? Venkatesh, there is some sound. Please mute. Venkatesh, can you hear me? Okay, thank you. So, but however, India must take the pride of being introduced to this tradition in the medieval period itself. You know, you know, the tradition, the syncretic tradition, what I call today the secular tradition. It was, very much part of Indian past or Indian history, and that too in the medieval period. India has experienced this secular value or this tradition, and that's why to Rajiv Bhargav is one of the leading political theorists on secularism. He often says that secularism was, see, India did not become secular after the inclusion of that secular word in the preamble, in the 42nd or 43rd amendment. But much more before it, you know you know much before it, India was a secular state, right? So it is not due to the injection of that secular word India becomes secular, but before it was being used in the preamble or constitution. India was actually the secular state, and one can understand this statement of Rajiv Bhargav here, right? How this tradition, this syncretic tradition, was part of India's history in the medieval period. Now, this syncretic tradition evolved through different processes, uh, you know, uh, from the above and from the below. Now, this syncretism or syncretic tradition, it was facilitated, and that tradition was facilitated from the bottom and from the above, right? So, from the below, this bhakti and Sufi tradition emerged, and from the people in a civil society for the quest of liberation or emancipation, for the liberation and emancipation. And remember, this Bhakti and Sufi tradition, it was actually the tradition by the by the poor people, and it was a tradition of the poor people, by the poor people, and of the poor people, and for the poor people. Right? This Bhakti and Sufi tradition, and these two tradition has helped these disadvantaged people, help the poor people in order to liberate from their pain, or from the exploitation. And these two tradition emancipated their life. This true tradition try to take their life from physical to metaphysical, right? So it added a very superior values or superior meaning to their life. So from the below, this bhakti and Sufi tradition emerged from the people in civil society for the quest of liberation and emancipation. And from the above, I said, the bhakti tradition was facilitated from the below and from the above. And from the above, both this tradition, emerged due to the role of the state. Now, state also facilitate in its governance, which strengthened this tradition, right? And in this context, it is worth mentioning, or the two important personality should be mentioned. And what is these two important iconic personalities? Now, one is the Ashoka and another is the Akbar. And these two periods of Ashoka and period of Akbar in the Indian history is celebrated as truly syncretic, right? So if you go to the historical genesis of syncretic tradition, then you have to understand the period of Ashoka and the period of Akbar. Now, why Ashoka? What Ashoka did. Now, Ashoka he gave lots of freedom to the different sects in his kingdom, and he has patronized or accommodated differences. Now, this is very important. See, some of these scholar, most of the scholar, Indian secularism is not all about separation between the state and the church, or religion and the politics. See, in Indian secularism, there is the existence of the state, and there is the existence of the religion. The state can interfere in the religion, and state cannot also interfere in the religion. So the term called is Rajiv Bhargava used the term principal distance, in which context the state can interfere in the religion, religion can interfere in the state, and in which context that both should not interfere in each other. And that's why Indian secularism is called the accommodative secularism. Accommodative means how you are accommodating the differences, how you are solving the various disputes between communities, between religious communities, between different identities. Now, Ashoka did such work in the Indian history. Ashoka did. Ashoka had patronized many, or accommodated many differences, and Ashoka had given freedom to the different sects in its freedom, right? So every sect is actually equal. Every religion, every community in the eyes of Ashoka is actually equal. So every community has its own autonomy, has its own saying, right? Now, Ashoka did it in his period, or in his rule, and similarly, Akbar, he founded a new religion called Din-i-Ilahi. What Saha asked in the last class. And what is this Din-i-Ilahi? What is this Din-Ilahi? Now, it is the best aspects of all religion. The best aspects of the all religion. What does it mean? Why then? Why Akbar? He did not follow Islam. Rather than he followed a kind of religion that is called Ilahi. Now Akbar wanted to learn the good things of all religions, the best aspect of the all religion, because he wanted to create a secular value system, a secular value. That is, Akbar. And right now, I want to take the question of Taha, that why people didn't follow Din-i-Ilahi, uh, rather they follow burning. Why? Taha, was this your question? That why people followed burning, not the Akbar Din-i-Ilahi? Taha, are you there?
Sir, yes, sir.
Was it your question in the last class?
Sir,
Yes.
not that, sir, but I asked about Deen Ilahi, sir, regarding that.
Din-i-Ilahi. What was your question in the last class?
Like, we took this Barni and Abu Fazal, right, as part of this Islamic tradition, medieval and modern, right?
Uh, uh, uh,
So,
uh, uh,
where
uh.
Deen Ilahi will be, can be placed. Means, because Akbar followed, Abu
See,
Fazal
no,
was the minister in the Akbar's court,
no,
right?
your voice is not audible. But whatever I understood your question in the last class, I understand ki why people or Musalman, they did not follow this Deen Ilahi tradition of Akbar, right? It's primarily because Akbar tried to establish a secular values, right? And prevailing the secular values over Islam, it was the priority of Akbar. Now Akbar wanted to prioritize secular values, deen ilahi, over Islam, and that was not acceptable to the Muslim community. And to the Muslim community, maybe they were all guided by the perspective of political Islam. Maybe they are guided by perspective of Iqbal, that modernity fused with the Islam. So there is no need to teach Islam what is modernity. Instead, the modernity should learn from the Islam, and that's practically because of these six perspective. Out of six perspective, four or five perspective, it is giving importance to the importance to the Islam than modernity. And here modernity means what? Modernity means basically secular values, rationality, objectivity. This is modernity. Now, Akbar, he given importance to the secular value over the Islam, but it was not accepted by the Islamic community by and large, in terms of time and in terms of space. And that is why, from the sixth perspective, four or five perspective, it is supporting that Islam is better than the modernity. Islam is better than the secular. Islam is better than the dini life. Right? Now, so far as the syncretism from below is concerned, two movements are very significant, as I told earlier. That is the Bhaktiism and Sufism, or Bhakti movement and Sufi movement. And both these movement brought new forms of religious expression among the Hindus and Muslims. When Bhaktiism and Sufism was there, these are the liberal Islam or liberal Hindu. At the same time, this liberal Islam, he faced the problem from the Orthodox Islam, and liberal Hindus, or the Bhaktis, Bhakti saints. So Islamic saints and Bhakti saints, they faced orthodoxy from their respective religion. Now, both brought a new forms of religious expression among Muslim and Hindus. And Sufis, Sufism, what is this Sufism? Now, within the Islam, there were many, movements against its orthodoxy. And Sufism is one of the various movements within the Islam. And these movements mostly centered on the interpretation of the Quran, right? So the Orthodox Muslim, or the radical Muslim, and the liberal Muslim or Sufi, both are deriving their understanding, interpretation, logic, philosophy from the Quran. If you remember in the last class, somebody asked, maybe Venkatesh, that everything is derived from the Quran. If you remember the Ambedkar's best statement, so I am giving this constitution to you, but whether it is a right constitution or wrong constitution, it depends on you. In which way you are understanding it, that is very important. In which way you are taking it, in which way you are reading Quran, in which intellectual ability you are having in order to read and understand Quran. That is very important. So as I said, the Sufists, they derive from the Quran, and they built their argument, built their philosophy centered around the interpretation of the Quran. And these Sufis called for a liberalism in Islam. Sufi called for liberalism in Islam and emphasized that egalitarianism and universal love. To Sufi, that egalitarianism and universal love are the two messages of the Quran. A proper reading of the Quran will lead to egalitarian society and it will lead to the universal love. Right? That is Sufis' understanding of Quran. And like Sufis, the Bhakti saints, they also try to transform Hinduism by introducing the devotion or Bhakti as the means to attain the God. As the means to attain the God. So devotion means what? Devotion means understanding who you are, understanding your own spiritualism, going beyond your narrow identity, realizing who you are. Your identity will not be decided by other, rather than your identity will be decided by yourself. What you do, in which way you perceive, in which way you think, what should be the right thinking, what is the goal of human life, from where you belong, and at the end where you will go, what you should do, what is the significant work that you are supposed to do in this life or in this birth. So once you are within this thought or within this devotion or bhakti, then nothing will happen to you, because your state of mind is not in this material world, rather than your state of mind is in the spiritual world, where you are realizing at your affective zone that you are realizing your creator, you are realizing your duty, you are above than the life and the death, you are above than the pain and pleasure. So that is called the bhakti or devotion. And they these bhakti saints, they were against the caste system, because caste system is nonsense so far as this bhakti or devotion is concerned. Caste system is nonsense. And I said that this bhakti movement is one integral part of the Hinduism, right? So within the Hinduism also, there were fighting against the caste. So all Hindus are not for the caste. There are some Hindu, they are against the caste, and you can give the example of this bhakti saints. So bhakti saints were against the caste system, because caste system is against the devotion, against the bhakti. Now both the Sufi and caste, these two movements brought Hindu and Muslim nearer. The liberal Muslim and the liberal Hindu, they can have very good relationship. The Orthodox Muslim and the Orthodox Hindu, they are just, distract. The liberal Hindu and liberal Muslim attract. The Orthodox Muslim and Orthodox Hindu, they distract. Right? And both the followers of Bhaktism and Sufism, the people, they used local language of the people and made religion accessible to all. Right? So they have the knowledge of Sanskrit, but they learn the local language in order to send that true message of Quran or Gita to the ordinary people, Aam Admi, common people. So to do that, they used the local language of the people. So to make them know that who they are, what they should do, how they should go, their parochial identity, parochial subjugation, how they can get the liberation, how they can get the salvation. And that's why they use the local language, and they made religion accessible to all. Can a ordinary Islam understand Quran? Can a ordinary Hindu understand Gita? No. To understand Gita, you must have command over the language first of all, and you must have command over your rationality. You cannot understand simply, right? And both were very much shocked at the degradation of political and religious life. Both were shocked. How come the radical Hindu and radical Islam is strengthening in society and in the political sphere? What kind of Hindus they are, and what kind of Musliman they are? Why they don't understand their Quran and their Gita perfectly? Why there is a degeneration of this, socio-political and religious life of people? Why there is, communal riot? Why there is a hatredness between the Hindu and the Muslim? When their religious text is much secular, and how people become communal? If Gita secular, Quran secular, how come Hindu and Muslim they become communal? And both people, followers of Bhakti and Sufi tradition, they were shocked. Look at this degeneration. And both opposed the vulgar display of the wealth. And that's why the follower of, Bhakti tradition and Sufi tradition, they were with the common people, they were living an ordinary life. For them, cooperation is very important, helping is very important, not the competition, not the showing or displaying your strength by showing your wealth, not to disempower other, rather to empower other. Right? So both Sufism and Bhaktism, they were opposed to this vulgar display of wealth. And today, this vulgar display of wealth, you can experience in India in a capitalist system, in a neo-colonial system. How there is a vulgar display of wealth. How wealth is determining the human value. If you do not have any wealth, in fact, if you do not have any job, if you belong to middle class, then you are nobody. And there are many who have committed suicide because of this vulgar display of the wealth. And Bhakti and Sufi follower, they were against it because they understood that this vulgar display of wealth, it will finish humanity. And when humanity is not there, then what is the significance of the wealth? And this logic, this realization was there with the Sufi and the Bhakti followers. And both Sufi and Bhakti followers, they like the aesthetic life. Life must be aesthetic. And in fact, the social reform, it began with the Sufi and Bhakti tradition. So they were not claiming themselves as a reformer. They were wandering here and there. They were spreading messages. They were not claiming that they are the reformer. But in fact, they were doing the true social reform. And both were against the formal worship, rigidity, and fanaticism in religion. because both are the liberal Hindu and liberal Islam. So liberal Hindu, liberal Islam, they are always against the formal worship. What is a formal worship? That you are institutionalizing your worship. You are designing a mosque. You are designing a temple. You are advocating for either Babri Masjid or the Ram temple. That is a formal worship. Bhakti tradition and Sufi tradition, they are opposed to this Babri Masjid and Ram Mandir. Worshipping cannot be formal, it is always informal. It is between you and your God. No temple or no mosque is required for that. The self realization is enough to reach to the God. And they were not rigid the way Zakir Naik, he was rigid. And he is not flexible. And he's thinking that whatever he understands that is right and others are wrong. And to Sufi tradition, that everything is an interpretation. Everything can be seen in multiple perspectives, and no perspective is wrong. There is right in each and every perspective. The moment you say that this is right and that is wrong, then it leads to the fanaticism. It leads to proselytization. That you are right, he is wrong. And both this Bhakti and Sufi tradition believed in the meditation to achieve the salvation, yoga, meditation. Now, this is all about your, syncretic, tradition. So here I am stopping. I can take your questions right now if you have any. So thank you. Any questions, or should I leave? And tomorrow there will be your exam. So your exam will start at 4. I'll give you 2 questions. Out of 2 questions, you have to answer 1, and I will give you the word limit. So I don't want my students to write more and more. They should understand, and they should you know they should write the straight point and analyze that point. So no, you know, uh, gist is very important, right? So elaboration, I don't need unnecessary elaboration. I don't need unnecessary elaboration. And I will also give question like that only. So if you have interpreting, power, you can answer it. Some form of interpretation is also required at your level. And since you are, studying in central university, then you have to maintain certain standard also. And that is also required by the JNU, by the Hyderabad, or if you apply some in a bigger institution outside India, they also ask similar type of questions. Their answer you may not find in the book, but you can find in your memory, in your mind, in your analysis. Let's see how you are answering tomorrow. So, any questions, Taha?
No, sir.
Hello?
No, sir. No question.
Is that everything is clear to you, whatever I said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I hope that there is no questions. You are clear about this Islamic and syncretic tradition. Earlier, I uh, in, uh, talked about this Brahminic and Sarmanic tradition, and this Brahminic and Sarmanic tradition I took 2 classes. Islamic and syncretic tradition I took 2 classes, and this Hindu political thought I took 4 classes. So 8 classes was assigned to me to cover your first unit. So today I covered your first unit, and tomorrow there will be exam. If possible, after your exam, can we take 1 hour class from 5 to 6 after your exam? Is it possible, Taha?
So we have internal.
Yes. Is it possible, Taha? Take class from 4 to 5. Sorry, 5 to 6. From 4 to 5 there will be internal, and from 5 to 6 there will be uh, class, and I will start your second unit. Venkatesh, is it possible?
On Wednesday onwards, we have internal.
Acha, you have internal. So let's see. Okay, then I will drop the tomorrow class for your internal. For day after tomorrow, we can meet at 4 to 5, right?
Yeah.
Okay then. Okay then. Thank you guys. Thank you very
Sir,
much.
I have a question, sir.
Okay, tell me.
Sir, what is the main distinctiveness between this Sharmanic tradition and the Bhakti movement? And also another one question is when this Bhakti movement is all about reforming the earlier Hinduism, and in a way it also opposes this caste system. So why it is the part of this Islamic tradition, not why not part of this Hindu political thought?
Let me write your question. So you are asking what is the uh, connection?
Yes,
Uh,
difference or distinctness.
connection or connection
Distinctiveness. Yeah.
between this
Sharmanic
harmonic
tradition and
tradition
uh,
and syncretic tradition.
yes, sir.
It's a very tradition and uh, syncretic tradition. It was first question. Second question. What was the second question?
Yes, when this Bhakti movement is about reforming the Hinduism, the earlier Hinduism, so why it is not part of Hindu political thought? Why it is part of Islamic traditions?
No, Bhakti movement is not part of the Islamic tradition. From Islam, there is Sufi tradition. Now, Sufi is a liberal Islamic tradition, and Bhakti is a liberal Hindu tradition, right? Bhakti tradition it challenged the classical Hindu tradition, right? So your second question is not at all a question, but your first question is a very significant question. I will not answer you today because I need to think about what is actually similarity and differences between this harmonic tradition and the syncretic tradition. Both talks about certain kind of social reform, but then what is the similarity and what is the dissimilarity? Are you Saidam? This question is asked by Saidam, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Saidam, it's a very good question. And okay, tomorrow I will not give this question to you. I will give a simple question to then it. But it's a very good question to me, right? So I will answer tomorrow.
So
Anyone?
tomorrow we need to write only one question, sir, in the exam.
Yes, you have to write only one question.
Marks,
You
sir,
have to write
20 marks
out
for one
of
question.
20. I will evaluate you. Huh? So you have to write uh, near about 1,000 words. So you have to answer your question within 1,000 word, and I will ask some specific. I mean, if you have done your class from your class only, I will design a question, and I will ask according to my teaching, and you'll be able to answer. The moment you understand the question, then you can answer it properly, right? So thank you guys. Thank you very much. So I'm stopping right now.